Hello, friends, and welcome to Talking with People. It's a late night live stream starting at midnight Pacific time here at TwFP Summer Camp. Yeah, it's summer camp week, and we've had some campers here at the house. We got Spacey here. We've had Becky and Shane and Abraham and Susie here. And everyone in the world understands that summer camp can be a transformative experience. For some, might be the first time they rowed a boat across a lake. For others, it might be the first time they shot a bear with a bow and arrow. Hi, Zaylen Black. Good evening to you as well. It's actually morning now, early morning. We're in the wee hours of the morning. I've got plenty of Java and Chesterfield Kings, but I feel like crying. Thanks for calling. So, that song I just sung a brief bit of was called The Night Fly by Donald Fagen. It's a great song. I always found it very evocative, even as a kid when I first was introduced to this music. The story of it. He's a radio DJ up in the middle of the night, and he's taking weird callers on and he's saying, it's the middle of the night, I'm playing cool jazz on this radio station. I've got plenty of Java and Chesterfield Kings, but I feel like crying. Well, not entirely not apropos to the moment. You smelled the live stream coming on, huh, Hambo? What did it smell like? Juicy drama? As is often the case at summer camps, we've had our share of dramatic moments here. Kimberly and I have had a couple of dramatic fights earlier in the week. Lots of screaming and stuff. Today, she broke up with me for about 10 15 minutes for basically no reason, except that she was still frustrated over the previous screaming fights. But what was really nice was this time she came to me to retract it rather than waiting for me to come to her. What type is Keanu Reeves? I have no idea. Excellent. He's like this guy. But you know what? I think it's going to be excellent. Like that. That's that guy. What do you think about the theory that a given Enneagram type is the result of a distribution of neurotransmitters in the brain? I'd have no way of verifying or falsifying that. It sounds sciencey enough to at least attain the vague sheen of credibility. I don't know if I'd have to look into it, I guess. The thing is, I think a Enneagram type is pretty significant in people's profile or their nature or whatever. Like, I don't think Becky identifies as type 7, but I'm convinced she is. I think she's 7-8. I think she's probably 7-8-4 like me. There's definitely that. No. These problems will go away if I ignore them enough. There's definitely the anger, and at the end of the day, hey, I'm an individual. These are my personal boundaries. What type do you think is most likely to have a 5W4 or 4W5 Enneagram? I would say INTP or INFP. I think they're about equally likely to be either of those. I think there's plenty of type 4 INTPs out there, and I think there are plenty of type 5 INFPs. Remembering that INFPs have FI, a form of deliberation. We think of 5 as thinking, but I think 5 really is probably better described as deliberation in an Enneagram. because there are INFPs or 5s and INTPs or 4s, I would say 514, 415 is most likely to be INFP or INTP. I will say this further about that whiz sauce. To say that an enneagram type is the result of a distribution of neurotransmitters in the brain would suggest that to falsify that, we'd look to see, we'd ask the question, first of all, does that mean neurotransmitters are unequally distributed in the brain in the status quo? And if so, and how does that unequal distribution look? Like, are there different kinds of neurotransmitters that all the positive ones are over there mostly, and most of the negative ones are over here, and most of the double ones are over there, or what? I'd need a lot more information, I guess. But the point is that it's not inconceivable that such a thing might be true, but before I could even posit about its truth, I need to ask the claimant a lot of questions. How unlikely is an INFP 945? I would say reasonably likely, actually. I would say not unlikely. I would suggest that I'm not sure what makes a 9 instead of an 8 or 1. But so Sinjan says, what if the distribution of neurotransmitters in the brain is a result of giving Enneagram? It wouldn't make any difference, Sinjan, because you're just trying to use it to establish the Enneagram either way. It doesn't matter if it's a telltale consequence or an actual cause, because that's not what they're trying to do with it. Can you give me an any test right now? Sure, Alex Light. Once upon a time, there was a young boy named Alex Light who ventured into the world with a sword his great-grandfather had given, and the name of the sword was Lizard Slayer. And he knew, based on his speaking with his stepbrother, who was well-versed in the lores of the ancient, that it was his sworn and solemn duty to find the dragon that terrorized the people of Earth and kill it. The only problem was nobody had seen a dragon for like 1,000 years. But the prophecies foretold that Alex Light was the one who was going to kill this dragon, and that's why he was gifted Lizard Slayer. Anyway, he walks out the door and he runs into a pub, and he says, "Listen, and I'm only 7 fucking years old, but I'm out to slay some dragons. So give me a shot of whiskey." That's what we do. The bartender took one look at him because he was serious. He said, "All right, here you go, boy. You're going to go try to kill a dragon. Ain't nobody seen that dragon in 1,000 years, no." And then Alex said, "Well, that's why I'm here, bartender. I want you and every person in here to ask around and find out where that dragon is hiding." Now, you pick up the story from there, Alex. What happens? Or you do the same thing I just did, but with a totally different story about a totally random shit. If you do that, you're probably high up in the. I just made that up out of nothing on the fly, but nothing. Just the only thing that prompted me was your name, Alex Light. And because I started with once upon a time, I said to go, you were a little boy, and then everything just sort of naturally, cascaded out from that. Link for the article on what? What was I saying I was going to link to? Did I say I was going to link to an article on? I forget. Oh, Wiz. Wiz is going to link to an article. The article compared levels of serotonin, norepinephrine, and dopamine in each type. The 7 had high levels for each one. Oh, so if you're type 7, you have high serotonin, high norepinephrine, and high dopamine? Huh. Maybe. I mean, I take dopamine reuptake inhibitors because I'd like to have more dopamine. That doesn't necessarily mean I don't already have a lot. I could just be incredibly greedy about it, I guess. Camps. Summer camps are tutorials for apocalypse. I think summer camps are litmus tests of sorts. for coping skills and adaptability. And, you walk out of there, hopefully, I went in there a boy, but I left a man because I grew pubic hair while at summer camp. Stacy was just telling me today he got his first pubic hairs this morning here at summer camp.
Yeah.
I am so proud of him for finally entering puberty. What are you going to learn at TWFP summer camp? Andy, you didn't come to TWFP summer camp. You know you were invited. I told you, didn't I? I said you should come down from Fresno. I wasn't joking or anything. I thought you should come, but you didn't come to TWFP summer camp. So what this video is about, really, it's about reporting what's going on at summer camp. Some of the things that you learn at summer camp, well, you might learn that Eric's a bit of a moralist. You might learn that I don't know. Well, you're gonna learn what sash you get if you come, for sure. Everybody who attended.
I'm a moralist too, Eric. I'm just not a crusader like you are.
I'm a crusader.
Yeah.
I never would have guessed I would be such a stickler for things, but I guess as I get older, the road gets narrower for me as I get older. I can no longer justify shit to myself I used to be able to justify. There are some things I never could justify to myself I stopped when I was 16 or something. I was reading the cognitive type description of any, and they mentioned that any user will only stay interested in something if it has associative potential. What is associative potential, by the way? I think that's an interesting comment. I've never heard that before, but it's approximately accurate, which is to say, all that means is any will only stay interested in something if to some extent it links to their experience. Now, that's slightly misleading because any user can sustain for some stretch of time based just on SE shit. And the reality is any SE shit has associative potentialities. So it's never the case that something doesn't have associative potentialities. What it means to associate is put a word out on the next person put one word up on the thing. I'll use that word to demonstrate what I'm talking about. Just any one word. This is revelatory about what it means to be herpes. Banter. Okay. Well, I'll take banter first. I'll do herpes too. But banter makes me think of this Facebook post I once wrote, in which I claimed to have invented playful banter back in 1978 or something. And I said that prior to that, only serious and some other kind of banters existed. It was I who pioneered the art of playfully bantering, and ever since it's been commonly used by news organizations. This is my life events on Facebook. I've done a lot of crazy things in my life. The day after I was born, I jumped over the Grand Canyon on a horse. It says so on my Facebook live events, so it must be true. Herpes. Herpes makes me think of Nick, actually. Herpes makes you think of Nick. Nick, the ENFJ, who I don't think had herpes, but talked about how people who shaved their genitals were more likely to get genital herpes. So, if you were to give me those two words and say, well, do they have an associative potential? Everything has associative potential. You saw what banter linked to for me was a personal thing, right? A Facebook post I had written one time. What did herpes link to me? A personal experience. Nick, who I remember talking about that. So it's almost impossible to come up with something that doesn't have associative potential because NE is working in coordination with SI. SI provides some associative link, and then he goes, okay, I'll play with that. I read a paper that a lot of people diagnosed with ADHD receive lesser dopamine kicks from pleasurable things while also expecting stronger kicks. They claim that's why they bounce around. And yeah. I mean, I would suggest that INTPs have a particular issue with that they don't get as much of a dopamine kick from shit they enjoy as they expect, and they find it difficult to get dopamine kicks from things that last very long or seem to meaningfully impact their understanding of reality sometimes. So let's see here. Hey, Eric. Hey, Freddie Chandran. Nice to see you again. Ham bones. This is the power of NE. Yes. What's the topic? The topic is TwFP summer camp, which we're in the middle of right now. Spacey's behind me, maybe falling asleep at this point. And Cammy's in the house, and I was lying in bed with Cammy, and I really went in there because I wanted to have sexual intercourse. And when I was able to successfully do that, prior to having sexual intercourse, she's like, "What? You'll probably just be up in a few hours anyway." I'm like, "No, I want to sleep." I was like, "You know what? You're right. I can't sleep. I'm gonna get up." I really just wanted to have sexual intercourse. But regardless, I like sleeping with her and next to her and stuff, but I overestimated my sleepiness, I guess. When I was a kid, I dreamed of dying, flying, breathing underwater, and so people used to say you can't dream of dying because you never experienced. So I've actually flown. You can dream of things you haven't experienced. To dream them is to experience them. What drug helps one focus? Adderall, modafinil, methamphetamine, Concerta, Vyvanse, Provigil, Crank, Go Fast, Jolly Gas, speed. So that's associative potential, right? I can associate, but I can associate and think of such things because I can imagine them, seeing them on TV and stuff. No, that's not associative potential. That sounds like an NI user not understanding SI, is what that sounds like. I'm talking about specific links. So you're not an SI user, probably. You say, people used to say you can't dream of dying because you never experienced it. But that doesn't make sense. NI truth, this contradicts NITI truth. I can fly in rings. I never experienced that. But anyway, I can associate and think of such things because I imagine them and seen them on TV. No, you don't associate takeaways like you're saying. That's NI. You associate actual experiences and specific memories. So I'm associating the first one, banter, with the specific Facebook post I wrote with this. There's a lot of detail about what's in that specific Facebook post. And I'm associating herpes with a conversation I once had with Nick about people shaving their genitals. Those are very specific associations, right? When you're dreaming, that's not an associative process at all. Association involves, well, at least for me anyway, sort of, it's like, SI is like the bowling ball return machine. So how you go bowling and it goes down and knocks over the pins, and it takes it back underneath the bowling lane and brings it back to you up into this little machine. That's what SI is. Most of the time, I'm bowling or I'm watching the ball roll or I'm going body Englishing it into the pins or something. And then when that's done, I got to reach back to my SI to get another bowling ball. Like that. Eric, you said earlier that you aren't pro-choice and don't favor abortion. Can you explain why that is? Sure, because there aren't any arguments that win to support the pro-abortion side. It's like, if you accept their fundamental premise that the distinct growing organism in an early stage of development inside that woman is nevertheless, despite being a distinct and growing organism of the species Homo sapiens, is nevertheless not a human being, then it's property, and the male owns half of it. It doesn't matter if it's being kept at her location. She has no right to do anything to that baby without both parties who have shared ownership over it agreeing. I mean, every abortion is without the express consent of the father, at the very least, by the pro-abortionist arguments, a property rights violation, willful destruction of another's property. Thanks, Zaylin. I just made that up about a week ago, actually, that argument, because it occurred to me, well, let's argue it from their perspective. So it is property. But they don't want that. A woman's body, a woman's choice. So what's that thing inside of you? If it's not its own body, which should have its own rights, then it must be a piece of property. But you didn't make it by yourself. I mean, this would exempt sperm donor pregnancies from any check upon the power of the mother. I guess it would legitimize those if you were to argue it that way. But see, no pro-choice person wants to accept that outcome, huh? They can't. No pro-choice person wants to go, okay, we agree that because we think abortion is okay, it should be legal, that therefore we have to concede that the father has half ownership of the thing. Why don't they say that? Why wouldn't they be okay with that? Because they want the cake and eat it too. They can't have their cake and eat it too. If they want to argue it the way they're arguing it, then they lose exclusive jurisdiction over it. Okay, well, but even if it's a parasite, it belongs to two people then. It's not just her parasite. It may be lodged in her, but it required her to consensually make that parasite. And since two people made it, two people have property rights to it. Donation of sperm forms a role in the conception of the fetus, but the woman is the one who actually using her own body to nurture and grow the fetus in a manner significantly detrimental. So then, Freddie Chandler, what could easily be said is that there's a liability incurred. In other words, the male has to afford an equivalent value in terms of the promotion of the well-being of the mutually owned property. But it would not justify the woman destroying that property. It would justify perhaps her making a claim upon the man in addition to just doing nothing. But it certainly wouldn't justify any claims that she has entire ownership of it, any more than if you and I buy a car together and it's kept at your house, you're bearing the burden of that thing. When you get sick of that, doesn't mean you can destroy the car. I still own half of it. You have to consult me and go through some processes, right? Of course, property law and property reasoning doesn't work with babies because they are human beings and they're not objects that can be destroyed at the whim of the mother. Not justly, not morally. And there's no normative claim that you can extrapolate up and down that works. In other words, whatever justification you're using for killing that baby, if we apply it to something that's outside the womb, we would find it repugnant. So explain then why it is this normative standard fails to uphold intuitive moral truths across the board, like all good moral standards should. Why does it arbitrarily stop working at birth? There's no explanation for it. They can't win the argument because they're wrong. It's not like I care, It's not an issue I care about. I'm not out there saying, save all the babies from being killed. But I am saying what's far more wicked is the sophistry and fucking disingenuous, legalistic, fucking muddling bullshit rhetoric used by the pro-abortion people. They are not applying any of the same standards to themselves. They're applying it to anything else. It's completely fucking arbitrary, and they're too cowardly to acknowledge it. It's a shame. Yeah, you can try making utilitarian arguments for abortion, But if your justification for abortion is that it's useful and not that it's not killing, then your justification extrapolates out to all killing. Anytime that I decide that killing somebody is useful, is it okay? I mean, it's not like the woman's consulting with everybody and saying, do we all agree that it would be useful for us to kill this person, or that it's somehow legally okay, like with the death penalty, right? If you want to give somebody the death penalty, they get shit tons of appeals before they're ever going to get put to death, and they have to exhaust them all. There's no such process of law or process of justice applied to this question of whether that baby ought to be destroyed. How can we determine if it's useful to destroy that baby before we have a chance to see it acting out in the world? Now, that's the best argument in favor of abortion. The best argument in favor of abortion is that nobody actually exists until they have been observed by another human being. However, the problem that argument falls apart is it works for plan B. It doesn't work for any point at which after the mother experienced some physical sensation of the baby in her. Once that happens, it's been observed, so it doesn't work anymore. But it does work up until that occurs. Freddie Chandran, what about the fact that contraception doesn't always work, so now the woman unfairly holds burdens that the man does not? You know what does always work? Putting an aspirin between your legs and holding it there. So, in fact, Freddie Chandran, it is true that women have a unique set of choices from men. In other words, they experience the consequences when they choose to have sex in a way that men don't. Now, concurrently, men experience consequences when they choose to have sex that women don't. So, as a matter of fact, the man in that scenario, Freddie Chandran, is going to actually cover way more of the burden than the woman. Because remember, the man has no say in whether she keeps the child or not. But once it's born, he's responsible to pay for its upbringing. And in other words, he has no power over the choice, no power over the child necessarily. The courts will usually leave the child with the mother. And the man will simply be forced to pay child support for years and years and years. On his 18th birthday, found out it wasn't his. So don't fool yourself, girl. It's going right up the poop chute. Because ain't no way I'm making a baby, right? The thing is, girls have other alternatives. They don't have to take up the vag. Fuck me in the ass, please. I don't want to get pregnant, and I don't trust contraception. Let me just blow you. I don't want to get pregnant, and I want to have sexual activity with you. But that's not satisfying for me, the woman. Well, then here, give the guy a dildo. Use this on me because I don't want to get pregnant. If you're that concerned about contraception, or put a condom on and take birth control and use one of those IUDs and something else to quadruple it. Make sure you don't get pregnant. The fact is, you cannot make the argument that because women have to carry a baby, that they don't have to be responsible for their decision to create one. That is reductive and belittling to women the world around. Freddie Chandran, you know what I'm going to tell you right now? You're responsible for your own decisions. And you don't get to be like, hey, I'm pregnant now because the contraception didn't work. You know it sometimes doesn't work. You just told me. So the burden's on you now to avoid that at all costs unless you're willing to carry that baby to term. You might have to make some sacrifices to avoid murdering. That's okay in my book. Okay, but Freddie Chandran, you say just the formation of the fetus or the cell doesn't count as life, so then it must be property, correct? In which case, it belongs half to the father, and the mother can't abort it without the father's permission. Except it's not really property. It's actually, Freddie Chandran, an early stage of development of a distinct organism of the species Homo sapiens. There is no meaningful way to say that is not a human being. An infant newborn is an early stage of development of an organism of the species Homo sapiens. It's a distinct organism. The same statement is true for both a fetus, an embryo, a zygote, and a full-grown human being. Except the full-grown is not early stage development. You need to make a distinction that's meaningful. Why are early stages of development not human? what is the quality of early stages of development that renders them non-human? And when do they become human? Is it after they're born? So a 9-month-old that's going to be born tomorrow can be aborted and come out of the woman alive and healthy and then be killed? Or is there some other arbitrary number you want to put in there as to where we have to stop doing this? I pointed out that plan B at least affords you another argumentation chain. If you want to limit it to plan B, you might be on an argumentational path that will not collapse and drop you into the canyon full of jagged rocks. However, currently you are on such a path. It is not sustainable as an argument chain. And it just points out the fact that people who are pro-abortion, they don't want to have to justify it in ways that we have to justify anything else. They want it to be a case of special pleading, that even though it's not okay to justify the means with the ends, we'll do it with abortion. And even though it's not okay to kill early stages of development of human beings, it's okay if they're still inside the mother. Arbitrary. Even though it's not okay to kill people who are not currently capable of moral reasoning, it's used as an argument for non-born infants. It doesn't hold any water. The thing is, remember, Freddie Chandran, a long time ago I used to be pro-choice, and the reason I abandoned it is I realized you can't win these arguments. It's insane that anybody thinks these arguments are winning at all. They don't win. They're horrible arguments. They don't withstand any scrutiny. They don't generalize out to any other moral questions, so they can't possibly be legitimate. Okay, well, where you're from, the man doesn't have to pay for the baby. Where I'm from, the man gets absolutely fucking reamed by child support, whether he wants anything to do with the baby or not. The best it'll get him is visitation periodically. So, that wasn't my experience raising a kid, obviously. I got the kid in the divorce, and fuck that bitch. Okay, but if it is mine, right, I can get a DNA test to prove that it's mine, yep. So, okay, it's mine, so don't abort it, please. Nope, too bad. Doesn't matter if it's yours. I'm going to abort it. But it's a human being. You can't kill it. No, it's my property. I can kill it. Oh, well, then it's my property too, bitch. Exactly, Sunjin. Exactly, Kangan, Krishna, Sarma, Pagu. You don't understand. When it's a lot easier to commit murder than it is to justify it. And if we accept as a class of justification some bullshit, it will extrapolate out. And we can expect it to run afoul of reality right away. It's going to probably cause some problems as it justifies shit that shouldn't be justified. If you can kill my baby inside your belly, I can kill your dog if I'm dog sitting it in my house. Right? You don't have anything to say. It's in my house. I don't care if it's your dog. It's in my house, I can kill it. You don't agree with that, do you, Freddie Chandran? Yeah, and that's exactly what pro-abortion types are doing. Is cooking up ad hoc definitions. They're using special pleading on the definitional plane. Now, well, we're going to narrowly define. Well, obviously, it's okay to kill somebody that's not been born yet, because here's the key thing: they're still attached to the umbilical cord of the mother. Okay, so why in the world would that be a criterion for anything? Oh, well, because it's the only thing we could think of that's unique to infants inside the stomach. Okay, that's not a justification. That's like, you're just begging the question, It's like, there's no reason to think that the presence or absence of an umbilical cord changes the moral question. There's no justification, there's no indication of why that would be the case by anybody. They just make the claim like, well, it's dependent on the mother. So, okay, aren't newborn babies also dependent on mothers? I mean, if a mother says, hey, newborn, oh, it's really nice that you came out of me. Go free, little child, go free, and push them out in the snow. It's going to fucking die, right? So, I mean, it's such an absurd argument. It doesn't withstand any muster at all. It doesn't withstand any scrutiny. And just a clump of cells. I know. So, is everything that's a clump of cells able to be killed? Is it okay to kill things that are clumps of cells? What about wads of cells? It's okay for a wad, but not a clump. Why? I mean, he's making arbitrary distinctions that exist. Like, this is a distinction from this, therefore, that's the reason. There seems to be substantial gap in logic there, you know? So, what is the root of the debate? The argument about where life begins or what constitutes life? There should never be any debate about where life begins. We have a word called conception. It means the initiation of a new life. So, I mean, to say that life begins at conception is like saying the first quarter comes before the second quarter. Like saying the day begins when I wake up. Or dawn is sunrise. It means that. That's what it means. That's what the word means. It means this is the moment when new life is initiated. Well, look, I'm not in favor of abortion in cases of rape because it is passing the sins of the father onto the child, and the child's not responsible for the father's sins. It may mean that the mother's not happy with that circumstance, and I would be in favor of abortion in cases where the mother's life is at stake, because in that instance, her custodial duties, which are she's basically a regent. Okay, a regent is a figure that would act as the king when the king was a little kid. So, like, let's say the new king's dead dad died a little while ago, and the next in succession is this 5-year-old kid. But you're a European monarchy, and you think, let's not let the 5-year-old kid actually be king. Let's have Vice Chancellor Fontantine do it. And so he's the regent. And what that means is he acts in the interests of and on behalf of the king and in the interests of the kingdom until the king reaches his majority. Well, that's what the mother's job is when she's pregnant. She's the regent until the unborn reaches its majority and becomes born. And it is never acceptable for a regent to act against the interests of that which they are the custodial guardian of. So, you've got to accept that a woman has to accept some role in this. They're either a property owner, or they are a regent, or they're a mother who's beholden to their child, or something like that. If they don't want to consider themselves a regent or a mother, then they need to consider themselves a property owner. And that, as we already said, is a solution that most women find unacceptable for some reason. The idea that they should have to ask the man who got them pregnant if they can get an abortion seems a no-brainer to me. They had to include the man they had sex with to make the baby, and they knew what they were doing at the time. Well, Salem Black, I'm not forgetting how soul destroying rape is. I'm not something I can remember anyway, because I've never experienced it. But I will tell you, I am absolutely in favor of attaining justice for the rape victim by punishing the right party, the rapist, as severely as is appropriate. And I don't have a clear understanding of what the punishment ought to be. I don't oppose the existing punishments. I think they're probably fine. If you wanted to argue about the punishment should be this or that, I might be willing to work with you there. But my position remains that the only person who should be held to account for the crime of rape is the rapist, not the baby. No, that doesn't, listen. There's plenty of cases in life when unfair shit happens to people. When that mugger comes and smashes your knee, you never get to really walk right again. And you're stuck with that for the rest of your life. Victimization is not short-lived. It lives on in the psyche as trauma. This particular victimization includes its own kind of broken kneecap. And that's what the woman needs to understand it as. She's been encumbered, unfortunately, as part of her victimhood, with a particularly egregious reality. She's got to carry to term the rapist baby. And that reality may cause her to experience more pain and more victimhood. And that reality does not justify her exacting vengeance on someone who is guiltless. Period. That would be exactly what she was doing if she were to abort that baby. She's got to accept that reality. It's unfortunate, and we as a society ought to attain justice for her properly by punishing the rapist. But we also ought to uphold justice and make sure she understands that her victimhood does not justify her violating the rights of another person. And that is exactly what that baby is. Abortion sounds appealing to people for some reason because they think it's a more leftist position. Usually, there's liberals who like abortion. But it's not a leftist or right position or anything. It's utilitarianism at its absolute worst. I really don't want the hassle of this baby, so I'm just going to kill it. If I'm threatened enough by PTSD, I can kill people. Good to know. But yeah, well, so yeah, but we don't want to. Yeah, there's a risk in trying to afford people excuses for bad behavior because they've been the victim of bad behavior. There's very, very sordid business. It's the same with the fetus. They're unable to express pain, right? So, yep, it's slippery. I mean, what does the pain have to do with anything? I'm not sure what the pain is. What about arguing the concerns of the mother ought to be prioritized over that of the fetus up to the point where the latter feels physical pain? I mean, like I said, I think that in my book, it wouldn't be an issue because I've got arguments that seem to successfully justify Plan B. And if you're a rape victim, but you're too busy to get Plan B, then you made your bed. Oh, but Shreddy Chandran, my goal is not to convince anybody. Like, my goal here is not to convince you to be pro-life. Like I said, I don't care about the issue. My goal is the same as always. I'm informing you about the truth of the argument chains. And if you walk away from here and make better wrong arguments next time in favor of abortion, I've achieved a great thing. Because I don't give a fuck. But I do give a fuck about people making bad arguments. That bugs me. Those arguments don't withstand any muster. The reason I'm pro-choice is because I'm actually telling you the objective truth about the argument chains. I have no interest in it at all, either way. I've just done the accurate evaluation of them and I'm telling you which is correct and which is wrong. That's how it is. There's no avoiding it. It simply is that way. The rhetorical slopes are clear as day. The arguments are indisputably bad on the pro-abortion side, despite my best efforts to embrace them. All I could come up with was a justification for Plan B. Believe me, I'm trying to win all arguments on all sides all the time. It's one of the most morally reprehensible normalized behaviors in history, frankly. It provides no justification that holds any water. You know? If you're against abortion by the same principle, you're also against euthanasia? Well, no, because euthanasia can be consensual. I mean, that's the thing is, abortion is never consensual. The baby never consents to it. Euthanasia is different. If I'm dying of some horrible wasting disease and I'm just in agony and I want a suicide shot in the last couple weeks of my life to save myself the extra pain, I don't necessarily, I'm not sure what the legal policy should be, but I don't have a moral problem with that. Not that consensuality alone is sufficient to justify suicide on demand, but I think in circumstances, we do dogs the courtesy of putting them down if they're just suffering on their last days. A human ought to have the ability to choose to put himself down in the last few days if they're in terrible agony. It doesn't, but I worry about it being, anytime you have a law, it's written in concrete, specific, non-changing words, and those can always be exploited by a smart lawyer. And so all of a sudden you got creep, right? You make some sort of law that's designed to do something specific, and then the cops use it for all kinds of shit, What's HRT? I don't know what HRT is. He's a little old for that, isn't he? Is it happy rug time? Eric, what made you in favor of abortion prior to changing your position? Because my parents favored it. But my parents favored it for purely utilitarian reasons. They basically said, it's only poor people who have babies, and we don't need any of those fucking poor people anyway. My parents were kind of, my parents were, back in the day, like, my mom would see a car full of Mexicans, and she'd go, ooh, they breed like brown rats. I'm like, huh. I guess mom doesn't like Mexicans. Why should she be expected to birth a life? No, she. The fact is, Sredi Chandran, I didn't get what you meant by the rape victim making their bed. I'm saying if they don't choose to do Plan B, because remember, I have come up with an argument that successfully justifies Plan B as far as I can tell, because it is a legitimate reason to think that the thing that is called a human is not actually existent at all, and it is not something that that any other, it violates any other moral thing. So it's never the case that there's a human being after birth that's never been seen or observed by another human being. And in fact, it's never the case after a very early stage of development, the mother starts to observe it physically in some way. But there is a stage before that, when Plan B is effective, where the purported being, the existence of which isn't even known yet, and it is impossible to prove it exists because it's observed by no one. So in that instance, Plan B doesn't kill anything. It collapses a quantum superposition. And that's why it's justified. But that's what I was saying. They made their own bed. If they chose not to use Plan B and it was available to them, then at that point, they've got no excuse. If for some reason, like let's say they get raped out in the wilderness and it takes them a few weeks to hike back to civilization or something. Okay, well, now it's unfortunate that she wasn't able to take Plan B, but now that option is not available to her anymore, she got scared to term. She didn't make her own bed in that instance at all. But like I said, she's been victimized and she does deserve justice, but that justice should be incurred at the cost of the rapist, not the baby. Now, what exactly does Plan B kill? Quick lesson for those of us who are afraid of sex ed. That's the thing, Matthew Alistair. It doesn't kill anything. It just renders the uncertainty superposition into not pregnant. Was I pregnant? Nope, turns out I wasn't pregnant. Were you ever pregnant? I mean, there was probably a state of quantum superposition in which I was both pregnant and not pregnant. But thanks to Plan B, I collapsed that so that I was not pregnant and never was pregnant. And nobody can falsify that at all. So that's a winning argument. And there you go. You get a little bit of abortion. You get plan B. It's the best I can do. The only, and I have struggled to try to justify it just because it's a challenge. People, I don't give a fuck. Like I said, I want the best possible arguments. I want the creativist, the cleverest. I want people to always say things like, I've never heard that argument before, which I get a fair amount of because that's the kind of argument I want to make. I want to make the argument that makes everyone go, oh, we haven't been thinking about this right. It's an HP thing. We get off on that. We love to be thought of as clever and insightful and smarter than other people and shit like that. I just do it by habit now. It's like I don't even have those explicit goals. I really don't. My FE is changing. It's like I no longer need to. I hope that people believe I'm the smartest or that I'm the most dominant or I'm gonna go in and kick everybody's ass. I'm just changing. It has to do with just dealing with people in the world and realizing how much fucked up shit there is in the world. I mean, really, this video about TwFP summer camp is motivated in no small part by some drama that's happened here at TwFP summer camp. And I don't really want to get into all the details. So I have to think about how I want to talk about it and how much I want to talk about it. But, it's just, people have a lot of struggles in life, and sometimes people make bad decisions, and I'm not somebody who is briefly interested in condemning other people for their failures, but things that I see as more of an issue of character, I want reassurance that somehow this is an anomaly, an outlier, a fluke, the exception of the rule. And I think there's a lot of people in the world who, if they think they actually did something wrong, they really, really, really don't want to talk about that. Which, of course, means they're stuck with it forever until they do, as far as I'm concerned. It's like, I'm a huge believer in absolution, second chances, redemption, growth narratives, stuff like that. But it's all predicated on ownership, fairness, being like I saying, hey, I made a fearless and searching moral inventory, and right. When we were wrong, promptly admitted it. I tried to evaluate things objectively, basically, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Hey, it's one of the key things AA says is critical to, stopping being an alcoholic. The weird thing is, of course, I did that long before I got into AA. I was always doing that. I've always done that. And I remember trying to explain it to my sponsor. No, you don't understand. I'm serious when I say this. I don't have a problem admitting when I'm wrong. I consistently do that all the time. When I'm wrong, promptly admit it. And take quick check to see if I'm wrong. And then when I am wrong, promptly admit it. I always do that. He didn't believe me at all. He said, nobody does that. What do you mean nobody does that? Who doesn't do that? Why wouldn't you do that? Well, I was, oblivious about the realities of things at the time. Now I see, I've really come to see just how much of an exception my life arc has been. Like, just how blessed I've been, how incubated I've been. It's like, how in the world did I end up in such a good family, like that did no ontological violence to me at all, and was incredibly loving and supportive, and taught me the same thing I'm saying to everybody, which is that's not how we do things, Eric. When you're wrong, you admit it. You apologize. It's the only way we resolve things. And it's never okay for people who are wrong to not admit it and not apologize, because that means they're not allowing the resolution of the problem. So I assume for a long time that basically everyone was like that. And when I encountered exceptions, I just think, I guess that person didn't hear me, or what's wrong with that person? Jeez. I've talked to a lot more people since I started this YouTube channel and gotten familiar with a lot more people and have people in my home and visitors and stuff like that. I see that few people have such an easy path from the beginning until their 20s. Now, granted, I had a rough at least 15 years or so, from maybe mid 30s to when I quit drinking, or early 30s to when I quit drinking, maybe even late 20s, you know. It was a rough stretch, and I suffered plenty, and I was non-optimal. I still tried very much not to be wicked, but boy, did I suffered a lot, and had so little understanding of how much I was suffering and what I needed or anything. I was pretty lost. The only thing that I had to center me was my family. I had Candace, my wife, and Delilah, my daughter, and I was doing a good job of keeping all that together. And it gave me a focal point. It's like, I go to work, I bring home money, I support the family, I love my daughter, I read her stories and stuff, and I just try to kill my consciousness the rest of the time, because something about life is too painful to stand, or too uncomfortable to stand, you know. So I've experienced my fair share of suffering, but I think the reason it didn't shape me is because I was already shaped into my 20s by, or late teens or whatever, by my childhood experience and my upbringing, and the incredible individual affirming approach my parents took, telling me things like, what's important is that you do what you want and enjoy, Eric. Don't try to be successful on somebody else's metric and shit like that. My mom mostly, ISFJ. So, you know, does debate use a lot of NE, or is it mainly TI? What are the types that you would consider to be the best to debate or worst to debate, and types that are in the middle of the road? INTPs, INTJs, and ENTPs are the best to debate. It's a toss-up as to which one. They each have their respective strengths and weaknesses. INTJs, if you surprise them, and you're an ENTP, you've got the round probably. But they're very good at preparing. It can be hard to surprise them. However, ENTPs are very good at coming up with random squirrely shit they haven't anticipated that makes perfectly good sense that nobody ever thought of before. So that's an interesting battle. INTJs, by the end of their debate career, if an INTJ has been debating since, let's say, 6th grade, and they're a 12th grade debater, that INTJ is going to be tough to beat. And a lot of national champions the national champions in the big debate formats are all INTJs, ENTPs, and INTPs. Now, there are a couple other types that can kick ass at it. One of them is ESTJ, surprisingly. ESTJs can kick all kinds of ass at it, and I know this because my former assistant coach, Scott Wheeler, was an ESTJ. I learned a lot about debate from him. He's one of the best coaches in the country. He had back-to-back TOC champions in policy, back-to-back national champions in policy the last couple, like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. That makes him the best debate coach in the country. I mean, only one coach in the country can claim to be TOC champion in policy, and that's the king of debate formats. And only one coach in the country can claim to be king of policy at the national tournament, which is different than TOC. And Scott Wheeler is the same guy, the same policy team, 2 years in a row, and that makes him the best coach in the country at the moment, or at least was like last year, I think it was. But the point is, he's an ESTJ. And the other point is, he may be the best coach in the country, but that doesn't mean he can beat me. Because my team met his team in quarterfinals at Nationals in Utah, when it was in Utah. And I knew what they were running, basically, because I know what Wheeler does. For being a great, amazing debate coach, he's nevertheless very middle of the road. And I know exactly what he's going to do in the policy kids. He's going to have them establish as many impacts as possible, as big an impacts as possible, win the impacts calculus. It's a middle of the road 101. So I said, my kid's in there with an apocalyptic talk K. And sure enough, it turned out that they ran like 6 different link stories to terminal impacts, which means 6 different ways that voting for my team was going to cause everyone in the world to die. Like 6 different link stories to nuclear war or environmental collapse or whatever. In other words, they had maximized that particular vector and were running it optimally. And then I busted out this very obscure K called Apocalypse Talk, which says if people focus too much on low probability, high magnitude impacts, that creates that creates apocalypse. I put the apocalypse, and then if you try to turn it on them, you point out, and they try to turn it on us, and I told them, you just point out, listen, we have 1 link story to terminal impacts. The fact that you have 6 link stories, that's our link story. You see, when people like you convince the general populace to make policy changes on fear by provoking fear of very low likelihood but high magnitude problems, then it creates an emergency security theater kind of environment that actually creates the conditions that it purports to prevent. So, in fact, turn your 6 apocalyptic talk link stories are in fact themselves a composite link story that links directly to global annihilation. So if you really want to see the world end, vote for them and their earth-destroying rhetoric. And we won the round. And that was one of my most fuck yeah rounds because of my former employer. I was fucking pissed at him at the time. And I knew Wheeler was a great coach. I knew that this would be for sure my toughest fucking challenge. That I had coached against a lot of people, but this was the first time I coached at Nationals against my former assistant coach, who I knew was an absolute fucking beast and who had my old job. So, and I went in there with a much smaller team, and it didn't matter. My policy team got the semis. We lost in semis to some fucking Islamophobia fucking K, of all things. I was like, you cannot tell me you lost to Islamophobia. I told you to attack that shit. But of course, even if they had attacked it properly, it probably wouldn't have worked. You get too liberal of judges in there, and they're not going to buy the arguments, even if they're right. And liberals are there's a lot of FI in liberalism, and there's a lot of TE in conservatism, and I hate them both. Well, which feeling type would fare well in debate? INFJs fare best in debate, as far as the feeling types go. INFPs don't want to debate. They could, in theory, be decent at it. They just don't like the combative nature of it. They don't want things to be adversarial. They want them to be cooperative or something. Ben Shapiro is a good debater, and I think he's debated plenty of people who are at least legitimate people to debate. I mean, he's got mostly good arguments too. My favorite argument of his is the single issue argument, which is one I've made before too. It's not like original to him, but I love the fact that he's making it, which is Congress needs to stop trying to do so much in a single bill. Let a given bill do one thing and one thing only. And don't try to make these massive federal programs that have huge amounts of pages in the legislation. It's hubris to think that TE can functionally attain any kind of meaningful outcome in a chaotic system with agents who are both open systems and responsive and reactive. And it's not gonna work. My thing is, if Ben Shapiro were willing to debate me, I would be willing to take on some opposing side that I didn't even believe in. Because if I had at least a fair skew on it, like in other words, if I could pick an argument that at least is decent, that if I can pick a side of something that I don't, that has some potential to argue it, not something insane like, I could potentially argue in favor of healthcare, universal healthcare. Ben Shapiro's position on healthcare is that it can either be universal, affordable, or high quality. And it can be two of the three only, and not three of the three. But he never really warranted that claim in that debate that I saw on healthcare at all. He didn't warrant it at all. He just laid it out there as an observation, and everybody kind of accepted it as so. I would have said, can you warrant that claim? I'm curious what your warrant is. He would have said something like, if it's universal, it requires that the quality goes down because there aren't enough high quality healthcare things to make it universal. And if it's high quality, the affordability goes down. If the affordability goes up, the quality goes down, something like that. That's not really a warrant at all. It is conceivably possible if you were to at least structure exactly the right system. You could have some universality of healthcare that's both affordable and high quality. So I would be willing to argue with him about that. I'm not in favor of government healthcare, but I could certainly win the argument probably. And I would like to debate him simply because, well, look, I mean, nobody's heard of me. Nobody thinks of me as this guy like Ben Shapiro is such a great debater or something like that. There are people out there that people think of as great debaters. I've heard people mention someone starts with a V. I think he's a vegan. Vegan Gaines is possibly people think he was a good debater. I was a good debater. Nobody's even heard of me or thinking about me at all. So I would love to have an opportunity to debate anybody who's a big name person because I'm very confident that even if I had to take a side I didn't really want to take, even if I lost the debate, I'd put in a fucking pretty damn good showing. It's like, I'm not easy to beat. I know what I'm doing. I'm a professional for whatever that matters. I mean, it doesn't mean professional is necessarily better than amateurs and things, but I am genuinely, like, as far as I can tell, I don't see a lot of real top-level professional debate coaches talking about or doing debate stuff on YouTube, right? It's like, I know I could easily hang with Ben Shapiro. I might lose, I guess, but probably not. And it'd probably be something like a wash. He's pretty good at spreading you out. I agree. So Ben Shapiro spews out bullshit at a rapid speed and makes people gravitate toward it due to his drama. Well, I mean, spewing out bullshit at a rapid speed is just spreading it out. And there's nothing wrong with spreading. I can handle it spreading, no problem. And spreading is not necessarily a good tactic because only some of the arguments he's making have any actual strength to them. And he's limiting the capacity to which he can impact the significance of any given argument by trying to have to extend too many. So, it's like, oh, Ben Shapiro is going to spread me out? No, you're not, Ben Shapiro. It's probably a mistake. Unless you're doing it really kick-ass, it's almost certainly going to backfire on you because I know how to deal with spreading already. I mean, it's like sometimes I have my kids spread, sometimes I don't. Nothing wrong with it. Spreading just means getting as many arguments out on the flow as possible. Would you choose a side that is steep or will slope against it and argue in favor of it just for fun? I mean, I would do that if it would get me to debate Ben Shapiro. You know, I would prefer to have a fair fight if I'm fighting against him because he's certainly competent. I'm not going to steamroll him. That's for sure. I mean, the Oxford Union. I watched one of those debates. It was fucking awful. Oh my God. Those people cannot debate for shit. Well, sure. Yeah. Freddie Chandler said, Eric, I don't contest the fact that you're a good debater, but wouldn't you agree that your ideas can go unchallenged merely because other people might not be as interested in adversarial rhetoric? Absolutely. And yet I seem to find myself in plenty of verbal battles anyway. And I'm not interested in convincing you. I'm not interested in winning the point in that regard. Like, if you let my idea go unchallenged, that means you're telling me you either agree with it or can't disagree with it well enough to openly disagree with it. And either of those is fine. I don't require you to agree or disagree or anything. I'm just pointing out that you're either going to win or lose the argument. And that's a concrete, objective thing. And if you're making a bad argument, it's going to lose. Period. Who is your top 3 in your conflictor radar at Sinjin? Sinjin hates goats, sequoia trees, and people named Steve. The challenge is that your ideas will be subject to is only as good as your audience. Again, I'm not worried about the audience really. I'm upholding a standard that's hi Susie.
Hi.
You want to smoke cigarette with me?
Yeah, that's why I came up.
Cool.
Didn't know you were live streaming.
Just thought I'd chat out random things. That's why I want to be subject to the ideas that TI scrutiny you create. I mean, I don't expect anybody to subject my ideas to TI scrutiny. I'm saying
they are TI scrutiny.
If you want to disagree with them, great. Help me understand where I'm wrong so I can get rid of it. Nobody else seems to want to do that. They're too attached to their wrongnesses. I don't know why. It's like, why would one cling to a wrongness that's only going to carry one down to the bottom of the sea? I'm doing it right. If you want to pay attention and watch it and go, okay, well, this is how it should be done. Fine. If you disagree with me, I don't give a fuck. I'm not trying to convince anybody. I care about the form, not the function. I like to see clean argumentation. I like to see fair argumentation. I like to see people concede when it's appropriate. Nothing makes me angrier than when someone could easily enough concede a minor point that doesn't impact their overall case at all, and they just stubbornly avoid addressing it, don't concede it because they think somehow that losing any point makes you weaker. Absolutely not the case. You have to lose some points. If you don't lose any points, chances are you're not engaged in meaningful discourse. You're just engaged in trying to win. By and large, these days, I really try to engage in meaningful discourse, especially to people about themselves or about other people. Like, that's where conflicts arise mostly. Most of the arguments people have are not about policy or something like that. They're about, I didn't like it when you called me poo-poo head. You're being too sensitive. That kind of shit, right? So, in those kind of arguments, I'm always trying to say, look, we should all agree that in an ideal world, we treat each other respectfully. We allow ourselves to engage with the language of others in a process of honesty and openness and recognition that we're all human and sometimes we all need to learn from other people, and that's what language is for. Thank you, judgmental JJ. I appreciate your dollar. I really do. It's very nice of you. I feel like I'm busking now. I like that. I actually think that FE Doms can be good at debate. I'm aware that it's an unpopular opinion, though. People might underestimate the power of using role TE, inferior TI, SI, and so forth. It is the case that to evaluate whether somebody's good at debate, you have to set your criterion for what makes good at debate. And if you're saying able to convince people, regardless of whether they're right or wrong, then it might be the case that FE Doms are good at debate. But if you're saying able to win a round, this a competitive round is being adjudicated like on TI grounds, then no, they're not very good. What are some problems that EXTPs are bound to face in life? One of the biggest ones is because, well, especially ENTPs are going to face this problem. We operate under the assumption that we can frame the narrative. We can make the narrative what we want it to be. And we have a lot of power to do that. So you give me rock A, rock B, and rock C, I might be able to make that look like the Cathedral of Notre Dame. But you got to give me rock A, rock B, and C. You can't give me rock E and G. If you do that, then there's no way you can make that look like the Cathedral of Notre Dame, because that looks like a maimed highwayman hung out in front of a city gate. In other words, it's very striking. You can't help but draw the attention of those who ride past it, and it will make the entire city have a faint vibe of gruesomeness. So the question then, the answer I'm going to give here, the point I'm getting to is we have to learn that not everything in life can be spun, that not everything in life can be positioned, and that we can't control the narrative frame. That there are some physical realities. Thanks, Zandy. I appreciate it. $1.99 from Zandy. And we are being directed to use it for s'mores. Zandy, we will make s'mores in your honor at some point between now and Susie and Spacey and Abraham and Lee. Okay? And we'll film it, and we'll transubstantiate one of the s'mores to you. Okay? Even if all we do to fulfill this promise is make one s'more just for the sake of doing this, I will transubstantiate you a s'more. Okay? God damn it! Now I want roast marshmallows. Rowan Morgan, I want you to go outside. You find yourself a little stick. Get some marshmallows. You can do it over the stove. You just turn the stove on and just you blast TWFP and you roast those marshmallows. And I want you to pour yourself a tall glass of straight vodka. Just pound it straight down. Ruffle. Rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock. %60 of people will choose rock. What does Spock do, though? Does Spock use scissors to cut out his snowflakes? Interesting. Hi, Eric. I'm driving next to Amsterdam. Hi, MaxiConf. Wave to Amsterdam for me. Say hi, Amsterdam. Eric says hi. Wishes you well. Where is the TI in that list? Oops, wait. Do you think the hierarchy of the hardest polar functions, most at least, is as follows? The hardest polar functions? I mean, the ones that cause the most pushback from others, I guess you'd say. Yeah, where do you put TE? SEFETITE. SIF. I think I'd switch maybe FI and SI. I don't think ENTJs get a lot of grief for being SI polars. I don't think I get any grief really for being an FI polar either. Anti-polar, nobody even seems to quite get what it is, although I think I understand it now. But if you think about ESTJs and ESFJs, you don't think of them as being defined by their polar in the same way that ESFPs and ENFPs might be. Oh yes, why is it so hard to find information on polar functions? I mean, I don't know. I've made a fair amount of videos on them. I don't think that socionics really gets it exactly right or anything. I think it is useful to think of it as a place of least resistance, because if somebody's going to attack your polar, it's going to confuse you, and you're not really going to be able to resist those attacks very well, even though you might not think they're hitting anything. Polar SE is the polar SE types might be called the ideators, really, more so than even ENTPs or ENFPs, because INTPs and INFPs, they spend a lot of time deliberating, and ENTPs are much more likely to shift into FESE shit, you know. So really, the most ideational types are the two SE polar types. They've got ideation as their tool function. INTPs have got parsing as their frame, and INFPs have got attachment as their frame. But the reason they can't really pull the trigger, do things, act, follow through on their decisions is because they never really stop deciding. When you're a double deliberator, you got TI in the first, you got FI in the eighth, and you've got any mucking up any conclusiveness as a tool function, whether it's TI1 or FI2, 8, or vice versa. For INFPs, vice versa. But you got any messing up any kind of solidity or finality in any kind of conclusions, but you've got a deliberating type who's there to come to conclusions. But of course, coming to conclusions takes time. You got to spend some time thinking about it. INFPs and INTPs, they don't reach that point where they go, all right, I spent enough time thinking about this. I'm just going to go with this now. I'm tired of thinking about it. I'm tired of deliberating. I don't want to know for sure what the status is. I just want to shit out of my face now. That's what INTP does. Okay, I'm tired of worrying about it being right. I just want it done. INFPs and INTPs never say that. They never go, okay, I'm tired of worrying about it being right. I just want it done. They are still worrying about whether they should be worrying so much about it being right, because that might be something about which they're wrong, potentially. And then you're going to need to do a lot of musings, either with their moisture or their dryness, one of the two. A lizard feeds ferret paper, and we both sit on a stone in the warm sun and have a nice talk. I choose lizard. I totally choose lizard. That sounds nice. I was also told that I wasn't getting anything done. Is that polar SE? Yeah, that's polar SE. Polar SE is something happened the other day that was funny. It was polar SE that I saw around here. One of the two polar SE people did. I'm trying to remember what it was. I call NE for INPs the slow, unaware transportation to La La Land. It's aware, it's just not externally aware. Oh, slow and smooth. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to INFP INTP Solutions. My name is Dan. I'm an INFP. Today we're going to talk about how to prevent sunburn. Okay. Now we all countervalue an I. So one thing I know is not going to be a way to do this is to use sunscreen. No possible way we could use that. That's way too NI for our discussion today. So what we want is not to dismiss anybody's ideas, just to let them all out, just to hear them, because we all need to deliver. Some of us with our moisture, some of you TPs out there, I know you're thinkers. Okay, go ahead. Let's hear some ideas. We could stand under an awning all day. Okay, great. I like that. We could plant a bunch of trees. Yeah, good. We could live underground in caves. Very good. This will go on all day. And at the end of the symposium, they'll say, what do we decide? We decided there are a lot of things to think about how we're going to stay out of the sunshine and avoid sunburn. A lot of things. I think we all need to go home and muse more about this before we take any kind of vote, because we've all heard a lot today, and we all need to spend time with ourselves making our own determination about it, because that's how we do things. It'll take me at least all night. Let's resume in the morning when we can discuss further possible ways to avoid being sunburned while ignoring the obvious choice sunscreen. That's an IFB INTP convention called Polar SE Solves Sunburn. There are more of them than you. Trust but verify and trust your instincts. Like you trust Eric is on a good path. Pioneer. If you had a kid with Polar SE, how would you deal with it? I mean, I would inform them that they're not really meant to do a lot of shit and they shouldn't internalize that stuff. It's like, look, you're going to find that the world expects a lot of follow through from you, and you're going to think that's dumb. Don't let them convince you you're doing something wrong, because that's your nature. You're an ideator and you've got a lot of thinking to do. Hopefully, you can find a way to convert some of that to productive output, because I think it's kind of important. But really, what's much more important is that you love yourself for who you are and reject social mores that try to commit ontological assault on you, namely to say, I don't internalize your bullshit. My SE is not a problem. It's my nature. And I don't like doing shit. And yeah, I do just want to sit here and play on the computer all day. That's not okay. You've got to listen. I thought I made myself clear, Mom. I'm an INTP. That means I sit in front of the computer and research random shit all day. Okay? So if you think this is a problem, then you think I'm a problem. I don't think follow through is dumb. I've always tended to think they have a point. Well, of course you think that, because it's such a universal value. Well, oh, this person did this thing and it's wonderful. Oh, how productive. Oh, look, they're doing something over there. Why don't you ever do anything, Freddie Chandran? Because doing's for losers, bitches, is what you should say. Doing's for censors, so fuck off. You know? And what would they say in response to that? Well, yeah, you can't possibly be opposed to doing things. Why not? Who made doing things super important? Freaking Nike? Let's see. That brought a tear to my eye. I'm glad to hear it, but I'm not sure what brought a tear to your eye, but I'm glad that I like to include a little moisturizing in general in my live stream. So hopefully, if I don't make you cry a tear, please acquire a moist towelette to wipe your upper cheek here a little bit with. It'll give you the sensation of tears. It's just as good. It'll fool your body into thinking you cried. Zaylen Black. Leaving little to chance, they're able to plan out their lives for years ahead of time. This results in difficulties handling unexpected problems in their lives. They put a halt on their usual pursuits, and they tend to fear all the possible what-ifs, and those problems prevent them from seeing a clear future. Who is that you're describing? Yo, oh, you guys wanted to talk to me? I thought you were just sitting there. I didn't know you were.
We were, but I figured I'd just ask you. We were on our way. She wanted to smoke a cigarette, and I needed to go pee. And we opened the door, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Mason and Violet stormed inside, right?
In the lounge room?
No, in the
Basement.
basement.
Uh-huh.
And
as soon as
disappeared.
they stormed inside, they disappeared through the cracks.
Okay.
Like that. Like everything happened fast. It's like, get up. What the fuck? And just, like, it's like, I think they already knew where to go or something.
So
So they're
what are you questioning? Is what should you do about it?
yeah, like they're underneath the house, but I don't know.
If you just leave the basement door cracked, they'll let themselves out at some point. There's some space behind those little walls underneath the house.
Mhm.
They either can get out over here if they can still get out of that hole. I think I blocked it out, or they will come back out the basement door if you leave it cracked. They'll just find their own way out. If you were to accidentally lock them in there, then we'd walk by the door and we'd hear meow meow meow. Mason's really meowy. He tells us all kinds of shit all the time. He's always coming and telling us shit. And it's pretty obvious he's communicating specific things to us too, interestingly. But yeah, it's not
There's no other exit they can get out there.
There's a hole over here from underneath the house that I'm not sure if it connects all the way or not. I think they might be able to get out of there. I'm not sure. But
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
if you don't want to leave the basement door cracked, then they'll probably be fine. They'll probably get outside somehow, or they'll meow and say, "Let us out" at some point.
Yeah.
So that's the story about the cats in the basement. Okay. Abraham's concern is laudable, appreciated, and touching. A little touching. Makes me want to touch myself. I missed a post. It's polar NE. Oh, yeah. Well, polar NE is like ISTPs are the most polar of all NEs. ISTPs, when unsure about something, these types can either avoid making any changes at all or making too quick a reckless decision, either of which resulting in missed opportunities. When unsure about something that they're being asked a question about, they just turn around and walk away from you. Think about it for a bit. Turn back around and come back to you with an answer. And they don't give you any indication that they're doing this. They expect you to just sort of get it, I guess. I remember the first time Colin did it to me, I was like, where is he going? I asked him a question. He looked at me, turned around and walked away. And then like a minute or two later, he turns around and walks back. But, do you always do that? It's like, hey, Zandy, how you doing? And then he looks at me, turns around and walks away. It'd be very strange, right? Of course, they only do that ISPs if you ask them questions that are like TI style questions they haven't thought of. You go, you mentioned the other day about your position on foreign engagement in the Middle East, but have you considered blah, 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 blah? And they haven't heard of it before. They don't want to answer at all. They want to walk away and think. Let's see. The key thing about any Zealand Black is you can check it in a few different ways. If you ask an ISTP to give you 5 different reasons to invade Canada, they'll have a hard time doing it. If you ask an ISTP, can you come up with 5 different names for my new product that's a combination lighter and guitar pick? They won't be able to come up with maybe more than one. ISFPs are better at their NE than ISTPs. So I think that has to do with FI being just more fluid and more adaptable as a deliberation function than is TI, and necessarily incorporating more respect for possibilities than does TI. But I don't know where I was going with that. Let's see. They tend to fear all the possible what ifs when those problems prevent them from seeing a clear future. But one thing I've noticed about poor NE in general, from Kimberly, for example, is she doesn't seem to get when it's futile to have any further ideation. So I'll start ideating, like she's like, I'm worried about what's going to happen with Mietti. And so I'll start down thinking about it, and I'll go, well, let's see. If they were to complain to us about this, and I were to say that, then they'd say this. But then they might say that, or they took that approach. Then, okay. So, well, I can't know right now how it's going to exactly play out, but I can't find any way in which we lose this. However, the specifics of how I would go about approaching it are going to be contingent on what they say. And they have a few different possibilities. I don't really want to work out all the conditionals of those right now. So just suffice it to say, I'm comfortable that I'll be able to handle it, whatever it is, whatever approach they take. Kimberly doesn't know when it's futile to try to think of further things. Like, you need to wait for more information before further ideation can be useful, because you're stuck pending waiting on pieces of information to come in. She will try to think about things, fret about things that it's like, I've done all the work that can be done right now already in thinking about this, and it's necessary for me to let the process develop a bit and work with it in real time, like with my hand. But she doesn't. If she can't predict convincingly that it's going to turn out the way she wants it to, she assumes it's going to turn out badly because there's a long history of missing shit. She's missing possibilities. I'm pretty sure this is airtight. And she brings it up. Like, here's my argument. It's airtight. And it's not airtight at all. And then she gets it turned on her. And then she's reeling again from argumentation. So her NE is definitely better than ISTP's, but it's also telling that that's part of having strong NEs, is knowing when not to ideate any further, because you've done the nodes, you don't need to do within them, and you don't need to do nodes you don't need to do. Whom did Senjin want to kill? Attila the Hun. But he was too late. He was born too late. You missed the post. It's for Ernie. Right. Senjin, will you enjoy it when you cross each meeting off of your list? Eric, how come you think the INFJs have an easier time in the world compared to INFPs and both types struggle with bad SE and bad TE? I don't think that INFJs have an easier time of it. I think they appear to have an easier time of it, and they convince everybody that they're somehow where one wants to be, so to speak. But I think they have a hell of a hard time of it because they're constantly concerning themselves about what's real and what's not, and whether their intuition and their sense of social management renders them not real to other people. In other words, other people are only responding to the INFJ because of how the INFJ is serving the other people's FE interests, which the INFJ continues to do because it's so effective, but it's continually haunted by the sense of they don't like me, they like my FE. Let's see here. I like lists, but I saw TED Talks that said ISTPs. I just like to draw, and lists are an excuse. What are some of the behavioral displays of poor TI than being bad at conditional logic? I mean, there's a lack of checking themselves at all. If you have TI users, the higher it is, the more likely they are to go. So one of the things, the difference is like on last Wednesday, Thursday. It was Thursday. TI 1-2 will do that shit. You won't ever hear that from a TI polar person. They just won't correct themselves at all like that. Unless you say, wait, are you sure I was going to take it? Then maybe they'll correct themselves, but not on their own. Eric, do you have a PD of poker tell? Probably. I'm not a good poker player. I don't do well when I play poker usually. But I try to play really conservative. I probably play too conservative. And so, I get blinded off or something. I get impatient. And I keep trying to get blinded off. So I throw everything in behind a pair of eights or something. It's like, I don't know. I'm not very good at poker. I don't know whether I have a tell. Crafts is kind of fun, but I don't think you can really be fun at crafts. You missed my first post on this. How is the description of polar SE? Let's see. This individual handles his needs by being prudent and farsighted. He mentally foresees which actions may be harmful or inopportune to himself and disruptive of physical stability. He does not intrude onto other people's space or territory, easily annoyed fluctuates when transgressing into his own space. He can anticipate which behavior may be perceived as a transgression and disapproves of those who regularly behave in such a manner. He tries to avoid and prevent anything that would result in excessive commotion or upheaval, which could potentially ruin his personal homeostasis. Okay, well, the thing is, the first thing I would note is it's got the engine of this wrong. This is pretending as though SE polar is an avoidance of things that threaten the third slot SI. That's not the case. SE polar is an inability to act by a SE because of a uniform reflexive action by an any. In other words, the 7 is always the other kind of 2. My 2's deliberation, so my 7's a deliberation. INFP's 2 is an action, so it's 7 is an action. INTP's 2 is an action, so it's 7 is an action. It's that relationship that results in the 7th slot being useless, basically. My nature is more deft by that. My any is deft in the sense that it's my nature, so it's not instrumental, and I can understand it so fully that I can even understand unconsciously the other action function, because being an actor, first of all, means I have an inherent familiarity with the nature of the function that cross applies to the other aspect. But instrumentally, it's my tool, my favorite tool, my number one tool that I always go to. And it requires, in my instance, for example, TI deliberation requires I exclude FI to deliberate. I'm not so good at TI or so deft at it that I'm a deliberator, in which case I'd also have FI in the mix. Instead, my deliberation function is strong, but just instrumental and a tool function. And as a consequence, since I only understand it in terms of its utility, and its utility is always running afoul of the mechanism of the other deliberation function, namely, FI always says, apply your subjective calculus to this. And TI always says, ignore or render or declare irrelevant any and all subjective experiences and pretend this were being evaluated by a disinterested third party. So individuals with high TI are in fact disinterested parties in the evaluation. They're capable of that and habitually do it. I think more self-objectively critical than any other type is probably ENTP, because with polar FI, tool TI, and dominant NI, we can think of all the possible ways we're wrong. We're not attached to the way we think we're right, and we are attached to parsing away things that will be a problem later on. So that means it's pretty rare you're going to encounter me in denial about something. Although I might have it briefly, but I'll come around pretty quick. That may be something that happens with age, because it is the case that ENTPs are not necessarily going to uphold those values exactly. I don't remember what I was talking about, actually. They have large, dark eyes, cloudy, not bright, and they talk about feelings while they stand in the woods. Deep and soulful people and kind. He not sin, can't have everything on his channel. He has his thing, I have mine. That's true, Hambo. I don't know what your thing is or his. Actually, I didn't even know Sinjin had a channel. I didn't know you had a channel either, Hambo. Maybe you told me before, but I don't remember. Why can ENTPs can see as sensible even with FI polar? Do you think INFPs are more likely to develop their TI compared to INTPs with their FI? No, I think they're equally likely to do it. It's just the FI is going to be less testable, visible, whatever. That's SI, Winston's one. Why can ENTPs be seen as sensible even with polar or sensitive with polar FI? It depends on the ENTP as to how much their polar FI interferes with their objectivity. So, I have just recently said that ENTP is the most objective type. Not all ENTPs are objectively self-critical. And whether or not they are, is a question of whether or not they've succumbed to the least noble aspects of polar FI. If I genuinely don't give a fuck, then principles are just things I can use as arguments when convenient and abandon when not convenient. And there are ENTPs out there who do that shit. I am not one of them. Because, and it's really, to not be one of them is to be very self-serving in a way. I'm humble enough to recognize that I'm not doing myself any favors by helping myself to get away with bullshit. That there's always a price to pay, If you fuck somebody over, it'll come back to you at some point. If you, whatever, Okay, I'm going to pull this bong rip, and I think I'm probably going to go to bed because I'm starting to get tired too. Thank you, Zaylin Black. Wow, what a nice live stream tonight. I appreciate everybody's positive regard, and obviously the super chats are fantastic. Thank you. In general, this thing's a lifesaver for me because, I get caught up in my little moments in my life, and some of them are dramatic. Some of them make me feel like, like scorned or something. But when I come here and I talk to Freddie Chandran and Kangan Krishna Sarmapagu and Winston's mom and, the people I see, and Chris, of course, who I really enjoy their comments on my music videos and stuff. Hambones here. Zandy, of course. I mean, she's the only lady who we have whose name starts with Z. Oh, sorry, Zaylin Black. I was wrong. I stand corrected. Now we got Zaylin Black, too. And Zaylin, I have to say, I didn't miss, although I didn't comment on it, the context in which you're here. And I'm very sorry to hear that. And I hope that you find it distracting until I reminded you. Anyway, shit like that weighs heavy on me. It's like, but it's also informative to me. Like, I'm really happy with the problems I have in my relationship because a lot of problems are way more difficult to solve than mine. One rip. Spacey's already long asleep. I'm the only one. Still keeping an eye out for bears around the camper's tents. Somebody's got to protect us all from bear maimings. I'm not leaving until I finish this bong rip, so we got another 2 minutes or something. If you want to back ghost, I'm just gonna ghost right now while Eric's finishing up. That's fine. Obviously do what you want. No obligations, no expectations, no stems, no seeds, no stress. But if you think you can maybe stomach 2 or 3 more minutes of playful banter, well, I'm going to do my best to banter playfully after I finish the bong rip here, or as I'm finishing it. I'm having to smoke it in small chunks, kind of, because It's a little coffee. And this bone kind of gives you big rips that are surprisingly big sometimes. It kind of take you by surprise. Or take me by surprise. Vandy does not have a lot of bears in Fresno, I don't think, Winston's mom. I will tell you that on Kimmy's phone tonight, though, she's on Neighborhood. As an ISFJ, Kimmy likes to keep updated on all the happenings in the local community. In particular, she's concerned about coyote sightings, people breaking into cars, whatever. Tonight we saw, I picked up her phone and saw in the notification, a black bear was sighted in Laverne, more closer to the hills than where I am, but nevertheless in the same city as me. This is not the first bear we've had, but they never make it down this far, it seems like. They stay up closer to the hills. Do you have a panda bear? You have a panda bear, Winston's mom? Aren't those things endangered or something? They're like, yeah, but, I saw one in a eucalyptus tree. I said, fuck it, quick, grab it. Grab that fucking thing. Come on. We'll be the only ones on the block with a panda. Winston's mom, those are endangered. Well, then we'll protect it by taking it to our house and locking it in the fucking closet. Good point, Winston's mom. Oh, you're not in Fresno, Zandy. How foolish of me. I thought you were in Fresno. You're not in Fresno. You're in our state's capital, Sacramento. Oh, she's stuffed. But don't tell her. Okay, I won't tell her. I am the only one on the block with ferrets. Well, Winston's mom, have you read the story Sredni Vashtar? Because you might be in for a murderous end. In the story Sredni Vashtar, the child Conradin prays to his pet ferret, Sredni Vashtar, that the ferret will kill his overbearing guardian and aunt, Mrs. Durop. Once, when Mrs. Durop had a toothache that lasted almost 5 days, Conradin almost became convinced that he was the cause of it as he continued to sacrifice elderberries and red carnations to the beady-eyed beast. But then one day, Mrs. Durop, the guardian, realized that despite having cleared all the guinea pigs away, Conradin was still storing some sort of creature down there in the shed. So short-sighted, she grabbed her key to the shed and went down there. What are you keeping this time? I'll have it all cleared away, she said. And Conradin watched from his bedroom window, family of starlets playing upon the lawn. And he waited and watched as she entered into the shed, knowing that once again, as always before, would she emerge triumphant, that grim and smug look on her face, and that eventually Conradin would succumb to the wearisome pressures of manufactured illnesses and things that were too dangerous, and a general need to remove from Conradin everything that gave him any joy at all. But as he waited and counted the starlings, she still did not emerge. Mrs. Durop had been in there an awfully long time. Conradin imagined her leaning down, squinting, narrow-sighted, and peering into the cage, and still no Mrs. Durop. Wait a second, what is that? Slowly, a long, low-lithe beast with dark wetness about its jowls emerged from the shed and glanced at Conradin, and made his way across the lawn and off to parts unknown. At this point, Conradin gleefully made his way down to the kitchen to grab a toasting fork, toast himself a toast, and butter it with great luxuriousness, and enjoy the eating of it bite by bite. And in the background, he hears the squealing ejaculations of the maid and the manservants as they say, "Quick, bring her in, bring her in." And then he hears the sound of a body being dragged. And he makes himself another piece of toast. The end. That's Eric's paraphrase of the story Sredni Vashtar by Saki, aka H.H. Monroe. So the point is, Winston's mom, Sredni Vashtar, is a ferret who kills Mrs. Drop in order to save Conrad from her abusive guardianship. And it's all because he made his ferret into a god by praying to it and giving sacrifices to it every day. Moral of the story is, ferrets are good contract killers. Eidetic memory, beautiful narration in your story video. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your positive regard. I actually don't have eidetic memory or anything like that. That was a paraphrase of Srini Vashtar. I have read it a lot of times, though, out loud in classes and stuff. Back when I was an English teacher. So I like story a lot. I think it's a good story to use in classes because it's short but incredibly dense. Some of the language I used was taken directly from the story. Like his Robert. What are you keeping in that locked hutch? Is it guinea pigs? I'll have them all cleared away. I remember that line exactly from the story for some reason. But most of it is a paraphrase of just me sort of freestyling the storyline, which I remember clearly with equivalent words, Ferrets are illegal in California? I don't know if that is. I'll take your word for it. I've never tried to get one, so I don't know. Carmel is by Monterey Bay. Yeah, kind of. A little bit. It's south of there. No, north of there, I think a little bit. It's right on the coast. Right off the one. Cat has an INTJ stare. Oh, PP? I'm pretty sure PP's an ISFP. She and I have a pretty sensual relationship. We make love a lot, and she's got that kind of ISFP love where she only loves me, and she'll run away anytime anybody else comes around. Why? She's an ISFP. Also, I have asked her 2-step genealogy questions. And she struggles with it, but she gets it. So I'm thinking, not an ESFP, probably. You can get like mother's sister. Meow, meow, aunt, meow, meow. I say, correct. Mother, sister's kid. Meow, 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 nephew? No, PP, cousin. It looks like this logical comedy hour again. Sometimes. This is the winding down section of this Nick Glop. I'm wrapping it up, and I always like to provide a few bonus jokes at the end because some people may have come in with a coupon code entitling them to a bonus joke. I don't want to have to cash those individually, so I just make general bonus jokes at the end to cover anybody who's got such a coupon. Do animals have types? I think animals do, actually. I mean, I don't know if my cat's an ISFP, but she's like an ISFP, basically, compared to the other cats. Mason's obviously some sort of social extrovert. He's very talkative, comes up to us all the time and says things like, meow, 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 whatever. Probably, maybe, like, ESFJ, I think, maybe. Violet's kind of antisocial but also when she does come in for loves occasionally, she wants to just be like loved to death. So I don't know what type she is. But I mean, my little dog before Lacey, I don't know what type she was either. She might have been an ISFJ. I think she was my dual dog because I've never loved anything as much as I loved that dog. My daughter, but I never felt any kind of loss, even remotely comparable to the loss I felt when my dog died. That's the biggest single loss I've ever felt in my life. And I'm almost 50 years old. So it goes to show you I lived a bit of a charmed life. Credit of Ashtar. Conrad was displaced by a Duke of. I don't know what that is. In the story, his name's Conradin. It's not Conrad. I'll put a link to it here. I think I actually have a video of me reading it out loud. Let me see if I do. I might have that video. It's a fun story to read out loud. I love the way the language rolls in the tongue. You know, he's my favorite writer because I do like his stories, but I just love his voice. It's proto-sardonic. I find maybe I don't have Sydney Bastar, but I do have this short story that I read, which is Book of the Grotesque by Sherwood Anderson. This is a really good story too. I would like to read this story out loud before I go. Actually, I think I'll do that just for kicks. I'll read a different story out loud. I know what I'll read out loud. I'll read The Open Window. That's another Saki story. It's great. It's really short, and then that'll be the last thing I do. The Open Window by Saki. Okay, here we go. Get ready to be absolutely amazed. Here we go. My aunt will be down presently, Mr. Nuttall, said a very self-possessed young lady of 15. In the meantime, you must try and put up with me. Frampton Nuttall endeavored to say the correct something which should duly flatter the niece of the moment without unduly discounting the aunt that was to come. Privately, he doubted more than ever whether these formal visits on a succession of total strangers would do much toward helping the nerve cure which he was supposed to be undergoing. I know how it will be, his sister had said when he was preparing to migrate to this rural retreat. You will bury yourself down there and not speak to a living soul, and your nerves will be worse than ever from moping. I shall just give you letters of introduction to all the people I know there. Some of them, as far as I can remember, were quite nice. Frampton wondered whether Mrs. Sebleton, the lady to whom he was presenting one of the letters of introduction, came into the nice division. Do you know many of the people around here? Asked the niece, when she judged that they had had sufficient silent communion. Hardly a soul, said Frampton. My sister was staying here at the rectory, some 4 years ago, and she gave me letters of introduction to some of the people here. He made the last statement in a tone of distinct regret. Then you know practically nothing about my aunt, pursued the self-possessed young lady. Only her name and address, admitted the caller. He was wondering whether Mrs. Sebleton was in the married or widowed state. An undefinable something about the room seemed to suggest masculine habitation. Her great tragedy happened just 3 years ago, said the child. That would be since your sister's time. Her tragedy? Asked Frampton. Somehow in this restful country spot, tragedies seemed out of place. You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on an October afternoon, said the niece, indicating a large French window that opened to a lawn. It is quite warm for the time of year, said Frampton. But has the window got anything to do with the tragedy? Well, out through that window 3 years ago to a day, her husband and her 2 young brothers went off for the day's shooting. They never came back. And crossing the moor to their favorite snipe shooting ground, they were all 3 engulfed in a treacherous piece of bog. It had been that dreadful wet summer, and places that were safe in other years gave way suddenly without warning. Their bodies were never recovered. That was the dreadful part of it. Here the child's voice lost its self-possessed note and became falteringly human. Poor aunt always thinks they will come back someday. They and the little brown spaniel that was lost with them, and walk in at that window, just as they used to do. That is why the window's kept open every evening till it is quite dusk. Poor dear aunt,
She has often told me how they went out, her husband, with his white waterproof coat over his arm, and Ronnie, her youngest brother, singing, "Bertie, why do you bound?" as he always did to tease her, because she said it got on her nerves. Do you know, sometimes on still, quiet evenings like this, I almost get a creepy feeling that they will all walk in through that window. She broke off with a little shudder. It was a relief to Frampton when the aunt bustled into the room with a whirl of apologies for being late in making her appearance. "I hope it has been amusing you," she said. "She has been very interesting," said Frampton. "I hope you don't mind the open window," said Mrs. Sappleton briskly. "My husband and brothers will come home directly from shooting, and they always come in this way. They've been out for snipe in the marshes today, so they'll make a fine mess over my poor carpets. So like you menfolk, isn't it?" She rattled on cheerfully about the shooting and the scarcity of birds and the prospects for duck in the winter. To Frampton, it was all purely horrible. He made a desperate but only partially successful effort to turn the talk onto a less ghastly topic. He was conscious that his hostess was giving him only a fragment of her attention, and her eyes were constantly straying past him to the open window and the lawn beyond. It was certainly an unfortunate coincidence that he should have paid his visit on this tragic anniversary. The doctors agree in ordering me complete rest and absence of mental excitement and avoidance of anything in the nature of violent physical exercise, announced Frampton, who labored under the tolerably widespread delusion that total strangers and chance acquaintances are hungry for the least detail of one's ailments and infirmities, their cause and cure. "Well, in the matter of diet, they're not so much in agreement," he continued. "No?" said Mrs. Sappleton in a voice which only replaced a yawn at the last moment. Then she suddenly brightened into alert attention, but not to what Frampton was saying. "Here they are at last," she cried, "just in time for tea. And don't they look as if they were muddy up to the eyes?" Frampton shivered slightly and turned toward the niece with a look intending to convey sympathetic comprehension. But the child was staring out the open window with a dazed horror in her eyes. In a chill shock of nameless fear, Frampton swung round in his seat and looked in the same direction. There, in the deepening twilight, 3 figures were walking across the lawn towards the window. They all carried guns under their arms, and one of them was additionally burdened with a white coat hung over his shoulders. A tired brown spaniel kept close to their heels. Noiselessly, they neared the house, and then a hoarse young voice chanted out of the dusk, "I said, Bertie, why do you bound?" Frampton grabbed wildly at his stick and hat. The hall door, the gravel drive, and the front gate were dimly noted stages in his headlong retreat. A cyclist coming along the road had to run into the hedge to avoid imminent collision. "Oh, here we are, dear," said the bearer of the white mackintosh, coming in through the window. "Fairly muddy, but most of it dry. Who was that who bolted out as we came up?" "A most extraordinary man, Mr. Nuttall," said Mrs. Sappleton. "He could only talk about his illnesses, and then dashed off without a word of goodbye or apology when you arrived. One would think he had seen a ghost." "I expect it was the spaniel," said the niece calmly. "He told me he had a horror of dogs. He was once hunted into a cemetery somewhere on the banks of the Ganges by a pack of pariah dogs, and had to spend the night in a newly dug grave, with the creature snarling and grinning and foaming just above him. Enough to make anyone lose their nerve." A romance at short notice was her specialty. Jesus Christ, that's a brilliant story. I mean, that's so stunning. It's just amazing. It's so perfect. The prose is perfect. Everything's perfect. And it's an eye bomb. Anyway, I gotta go. See you later. Thanks. One more video quiz. Attachment theory and MBTI. I'll tell you right now about attachment theory, Krishna, Kangan, Dharma, Pugu. It's unrelated to functions. So if you have attachment issues, that's a distinct problem that may express according to, if you got these functions, it expresses kind of like this, maybe, or these functions express like this. It does not correlate more strongly with one type or another. It's totally linked to abuse. If you've been abused in some fashion growing up, you have some kind of fucked up attachment style. If you haven't, you're secure. And that is totally separate from cognitive functions, except maybe in how people compensate for it, right? You know, what's your video request too, Zandy? Can we get Raul Diego to create famous known paintings? You know what, Zandy? I will talk to him. I will let him know that you like that, and I think he's gonna like that idea. I really do, because I've heard him just when he calls me, sometimes he talks my ear off, and mostly it's about how he went to the museum and there's nothing but human feces on the wall that they were calling art, and yada yada yada, and the guards are all censors, and they don't understand that genius like him has to, shit that he always talks about. So, Zandy, I will share that with him for sure. Thank you, everybody. I mean, when's the mom? You and I think can, it's like I appreciate you have the same sort of like, okay, that thing is great, right? Romance at Short Notice was especially. Isn't it fucking stunning piece of work? It's just like, how did you do that? How did you do that in 2 pages? It's amazing. It makes me cry. Have you ever played D&D earlier? Yeah, I used to play D&D when I was a kid. I used to play it all the time. I played it with like Mark and stuff. I played with a few TwFP people, and I was the dungeon master. And if I were going to play it at all now, I'd want to be the dungeon master probably. I don't really want to play a character, but I think it's fun to tell stories like that and give me. I mean, I like that shit, especially if it's interactive and other people have been prompted to do stuff, and I'm sort of weaving this story out of random shit. I love that shit. It's fun. Good night, everybody. Love you all. Thanks for being here.